Dan, I guess I'll start with last night. Paulie asked a question that a bunch of us kind of paused on. Who were you rooting for last night in the 100-meter final?
Oh, boy. I think you want to see greatness play out. It's like Michael Phelps. Now, granted, being from the United States, easier to root for, but I think if you see a story, you root for the story. And I think there's always going to be that cloud of controversy with Gatlin of, at his age, running this fast and having, a prior history of performance-enhancing drugs. So I'm going to guess most people would say Usain Bolt. Now, I was watching with Al Michaels, and Al and I were talking about who's been a greater Olympian, Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt. And before you say the obvious of Michael Phelps, Al said, keep in mind there's so many more events for Michael Phelps to win gold in, where Bolt wins gold in everything that he's in. They're not 5 relays that he can be in. And we started to lean towards Usain Bolt as a greater Olympian to be that fast for that long and winning his, 3 events. And while Phelps is the most decorated, is he the greatest Olympian of all time? So that was the discussion we had last night while we're watching Bolt win.
Yeah, and Dan, you've been doing this for a long time, paying attention to the Olympics for a long time. I guess for me, to watch Gatlin have that kind of a lead, Dan, and then to see Usain Bolt just blow him out of the water. I mean, the second fastest guy in the world had a significant lead, and Bolt won by a lot in just 100 meters. Is there anything else that compares? I know Katie Ledecky and other people have been great as well, but just to see that, it's just remarkable.
Well, it almost feels like he runs as fast as he needs to run. Like, how fast do I have to run to win this? And you wonder how many medals would have been handed out if it was only 60 meters instead of 100. Like, Gatlin would have won the gold at 60. And Bolt probably wouldn't have gold medals in that race because he just, by the time he gets top-end speed, is probably around 60 meters. And I found that interesting that Gatlin had an unbelievable start, and then you realize Bolt's just getting going. Gatlin's gone as fast as he can. Bolt is just getting going, and that's what's remarkable. But to be there when Ledecky was lapping the field, objects in your rear view mirror are not closer than you think. That, to me, was the most impressive thing that I've seen because it just shouldn't happen that way. Bolt's fascinating, the fastest man ever. Ledecky, though, I took away something a little bit different than I did watching Bolt last night.
Yeah, we're going to talk with Katie Ledecky in 12 minutes. Very much looking forward to that. It appears, Dan, as if both Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt are done, that this will be their final Olympic performance. Are you glad that they're going out on top, or would you prefer to see what they could do in 2020?
Well, I think there's the curiosity of Phelps came back. He went through the motions in London and still won medals. This time around, rededicated himself, and we saw what happened. But in what they do at those ages, it's a very tenuous situation, a platform to be on. For Bolt to come back and do this, in 4 more years, to be the fastest man in the world, I don't know what would compare with that. Phelps, as I said, last week, I thought that when he said he was going to retire, he was going to retire. It's just a question of, okay, what's the next stage of his life? Whereas Bolt, I don't know what – I even said to Al Michaels last night, I said, now what's he do? Because, you're up there that high, and then what do you do? I don't know what Usain Bolt does. Do you go on a speaking tour? Do you become a coach? Do you become an action star? Like, what would be next for him? And that's what I always think is dangerous for these athletes, the downtime when they're going, I'm not doing anything. Maybe I'll just start training again. And I never say never, but I could see Phelps retiring. I don't know about Usain Bolt.
Dan, set the scene for me with you and Al watching it. Where were you watching it? Because I feel like if I was watching that with Al, I'd be like, Al, can you do me a favor and do the play-by-play of this? Just you and I while we're sitting here.
We finally got to have dinner. We both worked yesterday on NBC, and then we got done, and then we didn't have enough time to get over to track and field, so we just sat outside at a restaurant, and we just watched it. We had a monitor there. having a couple of beverages, and we just watched. And he's so great because he's got so many stories to tell you. He's the best. And, he has so many reference points to be able to go, in 84, I remember when I'm doing the Olympics and FloJo, and you just listen. That's all you do. You listen. And that's why he's one of our favorites. But we just watched it, and he wouldn't have had a lot of time to do play-by-play, let's put it that way. We'd have 10 seconds of play-by-play with Al doing that race last night.
So this obviously wasn't one of my questions, Dan, but the Danettes want to know what you ate last night.
Let's see. I had salmon and followed that up with filet mignon.
Whoa!
Al only eats meat, so I sort of have to do what Al does, but I did sneak something that was actually healthier. And no, you're not allowed to have anything green on your plate either. Al refuses to allow that. So that was it. It was a pretty straightforward meal there, and Al's had steak, I think, every night here.
What's the scuttlebutt down there? The conversation around the Ryan Lochte situation.
Well, it was weird because the IOC denied it, and then we had found out through someone who said, no, it's real. And then you were waiting for the IOC to kind of circle back around to say, on second thought, I don't know why they were trying to cover it up. These things happen. It could happen in New York. I mean, it could happen anywhere. Well, not anywhere, but, it happened to him. So you report it. It's not like people go, yeah, I knew I shouldn't have gone to the Olympics, or I knew they were going to be. Rio's done a pretty good job. They really have. But this is unfortunate, but it happened, and you have to report it, and you can't deny it and stick your head in the sand. So I know Lochte's talked a little bit about it, but we're trying to get him on NBC just to kind of describe what exactly happened. But I think he's pretty shaken by it.
What's on tap tonight, Dan?
Oh God, I don't know. Something, and somebody's competing, and they'll get medals handed out. And I didn't know what day it was the other day. I was like, you just kind of just do it, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you go, I'm on a flight headed back home. So I know I got men's basketball, not the U.S. men, but I've got Spain, Brazil's in action, Argentina. So, and after the golf yesterday. I mean, that's been one of my favorite events, too, to watch that, because we're so cynical. And, here's golfers who don't get paid, and, they were worried about Zika and all this stuff and everybody who pulled out. And then you see Justin Rose and Matt Kuchar. I mean, Kuchar's reaction was phenomenal. If you ever want to submit a tape to every other player and say, this is what it feels like to compete for a gold medal, here you go. And I just thought it was that unbridled enthusiasm that we fall in love with the Olympics. You just didn't think you would see that with a golfer. So, and Justin Rose has still got a smile on his face. So it was fun to watch in a sport that we normally don't get that kind of emotion.
Yeah, it was awesome. We talked to Kuchar a little bit ago, and you could just hear it in his voice. Dan, thanks so much. Talk to you tomorrow.
All right, guys.
There he is, the boss, Dan Patrick.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.